For this week's discourse, we're going back to the connected discourses, the Samyutta Nikaya, and I've chosen a sutta that is somewhat along the line of the last one, where a bhikkhu is being moved with such level of personal confidence and trust, being so inspired to make a powerful declaration. Last time it was Bhaddiya Thera, the Venerable Bhaddiya, who made that quintessential statement of this is bliss. This is just bliss. And people misunderstood him. They thought he was mocking the lifestyle of a bhikkhu of having very little, because he used to be a king, a ruler, surrounded by bodyguards and different security personnel to make sure that he was safe and protected in his kingdom, even in his own palace, in his own city, in his own domain. But here he was all by himself in the forest, nobody there to watch over him, yet he felt so protected, so wonderful, so peaceful. And it was just a practice, and what the practice had delivered for him. So that was last times, the last sessions rather. Today, I think today happens to be the 160th session we're doing. I can't believe it's been that many suttas that we've covered. There's a lot more where these came from, but today we are going to be seeing Venerable Sāriputta, the chief disciple, making a series of declarations, making a series of statements. And to some degree, one would say he will be tested by the Buddha himself. So it's a wonderful discourse, which we have come across it, I would say briefly, several years ago when we were covering together the Mahaparinibbana Sutta from the Digha Nikaya, from the long discourses, the longest sutta. If you remember, that took us 7 weeks to complete a few years ago. So this sutta is also found in that, although the emphasis was on other factors taking place around the death of the Buddha. So I don't think it really did get the attention it deserves, because it's a powerful sutta, today's. So it is, without saying too much about it, I would let the sutta speak for itself. So the number is SN 47.12, Samyutta Nikaya, therefore 47.12. This comes from the last major book of the Samyutta, which is called the Mahavagga Samyutta. And the subgrouping of that, it is from the category of connected discourses dealing with the Satipatthana, the practice on the basis of the foundational basis of mindfulness practice that the Buddha delineated and taught for the first time ever. And from the Satipatthana, connected discourses, that group, we have the section, the subgrouping, that is called the Nālandā Vagga, or the section taking place or dealing with the theme of, or the location of Nālandā. Nālandā is also a place where we had the second major university in world history, which was sadly destroyed, and it took months for the fires to end, once it was destroyed. It's in India, and we still have the location for any pilgrims who would like to go and see it. It's quite powerful. It's the energy is strong there, with thousands and thousands of teachers and students for centuries living there, Buddhist. So the sutta today, therefore, is called the Nālandā Sutta, SN 47.12, Discourse at Nālandā, or as I like to call it, Sāriputta's lion's roar, because that essentially is what you will see taking place. So let's begin. Once the Blessed One had traveled to and taken up residence at Nālandā, while staying at Pavarika's mango grove. It was during that time when the Venerable Sāriputta went to the Blessed One, and after respectfully paying homage to the teacher, sat down at one side and spoke the following words. Bhante, I have such faith, such confidence in the Blessed One, that I declare that there has never been, there can never be, nor could there be in the present any other recluse or Brahmin more exalted and superior in his awakening than the Blessed One. Powerful declaration. And let's see what the Buddha says. Sāriputta, now that indeed is quite a lofty declaration for you to be making. For Sāriputta, that is truly a bold statement and an assertion, a bona fide and genuine sounding of the lion's roar. But how is it, Sāriputta, that you make such a categorical declaration? After all, have you had the direct experience of knowing the fully awakened Buddhas from the past, those Arahants from bygone eras? Do you have direct and personal understanding of the quality of the heart of all those Tathagatas from the past? Or have you gained personal knowledge of the level of their virtue, their meditation, their level of wisdom, their inner state, and their freedom from defilements and from future rebirths? What a challenging question. It puts a person in their spot, right? But Lord Buddha is saying things knowing full well that people who come across this statement from Venerable Sāriputta will ask these questions to undermine its authenticity and where it's coming from, its validity. They will question by asking these questions to rebuttal. And look at where or how Venerable Sāriputta responds. No, Blessed Lord. Simply, no. And how about those Arahants, Sāriputta? Do you have the direct experience of knowing the fully awakened Buddhas that are to appear in the future? Do you have direct and personal understanding of the quality of the heart of all those Tathagatas who have not yet appeared? Or have you gained personal knowledge of the level of their virtue, their meditation, their level of wisdom, their inner state, and their freedom from defilements and from future rebirths? Because Venerable Sāriputta said, all the Buddhas in the past, all the Buddhas that are to come in the future, and all those who basically, well, now there's only one Buddha. It can't be more than one Buddha in one at one time. The universe cannot handle it. So he was talking about past and the future, along with, in comparison to what he was witnessing in the Buddha, the Tathagata himself. That's why it's a categorical statement. And the Buddha just asked, how about the future ones? Do you get to see them already? Is simply trying to see and he knew Venerable Sāriputta's mind. He knew where he was coming from. He knew the quality of his heart. He saw it clearly. These are a series of questions the Buddha is asking for our own sake. That's what I'm trying to say. And anyone who would come to doubt the validity of these statements that are being made by Venerable Sāriputta. And Venerable Sāriputta says, no, Blessed Lord. He doesn't have any experience in knowing the minds of the future Buddhas, obviously, because they haven't yet come. And how about me, Sāriputta? Do you have the direct experience of knowing the fully awakened Buddha sitting in front of you at this present moment? So now he's challenging him, saying, how about me? Can you penetrate the depth of me as a Tathagata? But in order for you to, even if someone were to say that, they have to be a Tathagata. If you recall from the Mula Pariyaya Sutta we did a few weeks ago, only a Tathagata can know the depth of a Tathagata's quality of heart, the vastness of their wisdom. So he's asking him, well, how about me? Do you have direct and personal understanding of the quality of the Tathagata's heart here and now? Or have you gained personal knowledge of the level of my virtue, my meditation, my level of wisdom, my inner state, and my freedom from defilements and from my future rebirths? No, Blessed Lord. Then, Sāriputta, it seems that you do not have the direct personal knowledge or understanding of the quality of the heart of all those Tathagatas from the past, those who appear in the future, or the Tathagata at the present. Therefore, how is it that you dare to set forth a proclamation, such a lofty and bold utterance, a veritable sounding of the lion's roar, by stating, Bhante, I have such faith, such confidence in the Blessed One, that I declare that there has never been, there can never be, nor could there be in the present any other recluse or Brahmin more exalted and superior in his awakening than the Blessed One. Now, this was a challenge that the teacher placed in front of his chief disciple. Anyone who has studied the Dhamma would say, well, if anybody throughout all of the students had any right to say make such a statement, it would be Venerable Sāriputta. And Lord Buddha just called him out as to what is it that he is relying upon to be making such a powerful statement, which is a lion's roar. Remember, the Buddha was the one who gave it that title. The Buddha is dropping the hint here, saying this is Sāriputta's lion's roar, and we're about to find out how. This is Sāriputta responding. Blessed Lord, indeed, I do not possess the direct experience of knowing the heart of the fully awakened Buddhas from the past, those Arahants from bygone eras, those to come in the future, nor of the Tathagata himself in the present. Nevertheless, I have personally come to know and see the truth of the Dhamma, and it is this realization itself which is giving me the confidence to make such a proclamation. You might have heard the statement made, he who sees the Dhamma sees the Buddha. We cannot see the Buddha in person. It's impossible. He was alive, but then he died. But he made that declaration. He who sees the Dhamma sees me. He who sees me sees the Dhamma. Not just physically, visually, with the visual cortex and being able to visually perceive the presence of a human being or a Buddha in front of us. That's not the reference here for. He's coming from a place of personal experiencing of the Dhamma. And this is an encouragement for us to really delve deeper in our practice. You're not doing this all by yourself, trying to create something out of nothing, to reinvent the wheel, as the saying goes. No, the practice, when it is based on the Dhamma, puts you face to face with the Buddha. That's what this statement is saying. Because of the authenticity of the realization that the person has had, in this case, Venerable Sāriputta. Let's continue. Suppose, Bhante, a king's frontier fortress was strongly fortified, with strong ramparts and turrets, all of which were accessible only through a single gate, where there was positioned a gatekeeper who was intelligent, alert, experienced, and very cautious, keeping all strangers out while permitting the entry of only those who are genuinely friendly. Frontier fortresses were basically every kingdom. You see this also throughout history, in India, of course, but also in Europe, in China, of course. So the boundary, the walls that separated the kingdom, the domain of that ruler from those outside, had also on that edge of that kingdom fortresses, several, with armies, etc. So they were always under attack by foreign invading forces. So you see this example in many places. You see this in the Anguttara Nikaya a lot, the image of a frontier fortress. So here, Venerable Sāriputta is giving us the metaphor of a fortress that is well kept. It has its turrets, all these tower-like things. No one has access because there's only one gate, and that gate is being watched over by a very, very smart, shrewd, alert gatekeeper who knows who to let in and who not to. That's the image. Now, as the gatekeeper carefully monitors and patrols the path that leads all around the fortress, he does not observe there being even a tiny hole or crack in the thick walls that would be big enough to allow even a tiny house kitten to slip through. A cat, not even a cat, could crawl through any opening that might be there. That's, it's well protected. It's not Swiss cheese. It doesn't have holes in it. In this way, he comes to the conclusion: whatever decent-sized living beings wanting to enter or leave the city, they will all have to do so by going through this gate and this gate only. He is the gatekeeper, remember. In the same way, Bhante, I have personally come to know and see the truth of the Dhamma. And it is this realization itself which allows me to infer and make such a proclamation. This is because, Bhante, all the Arahants, all the fully awakened Buddhas of the past had already abandoned the five hindrances, the corruptions of the heart that weaken wisdom, having well established their minds in the four foundations of mindfulness. They had duly cultivated the seven factors of awakening, and thus had liberated themselves by waking up to the unsurpassed, supreme, and perfect enlightenment. The same gate. The Arahants of the past did not use a different set of tools than the ones that you have in your possession now. Possession, I use the term loosely in reference to the Dhamma and the teachings you have been provided. Same. Because the tendency of us, of people, especially those who appear hundreds of years or thousands of years later, once the teaching were first imparted, given, shared to the world, we have a tendency to think that, oh, those teachings were the genuine ones. We don't have the same. I personally have studied under teachers who believe that 100%. Scholars, etc. There might be some truth there, but it's not entirely true. Because if we have an understanding and appreciation for dukkha, the presence of suffering in our lives, and most importantly, we have also a way out still available, given by the Buddha to us, for us, to understand and to penetrate, to break through, and to break through in practical terms, the five hindrances, nivarana. What are they? Kama chanda, sensuality, sensual lust, passionate, being passionate for sensuality, sensual experiences, sense pleasures, basically. Vyapada. Vyapada is the aversion, anger, dislike, animosity towards things that you don't like. Then you have the twin bundle of tinha midha. These are the drowsiness and sluggish, that sense of procrastinating. That's the thing which makes you fall asleep while you're meditating, or drop out of sati, no longer practice mindfulness. Then the next group is, again, a twin group, uddhacca kukucca. These are restlessness and worrisome, remorseful thoughts, even fears, you could say. You can even add to that a sense of panic. So worrisome. It's a very, very agitating state of mind. Now you understand why it's called also a hindrance by the Buddha, an obstacle to meditation. And then lastly, you have vicikicca, which is the doubt towards the Dhamma, doubts towards, or perplexities, uncertainties towards the teaching. I don't know if this is the right teaching. I don't know if this is what the Buddha taught. Even if it is that you're practicing, the mind starts to come up with excuses to create a blunder for you. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of meditators in the world suffering from this. At least the last one, that's such a terrible, terrible thing. That's why it's so difficult for so many to enter, to become stream winners, noble disciples of the first category, sotapannas. It's so hard because the doubt is so intensely present in their hearts. It's like thick, thick, thick layer of glaucoma in their eyes. They can't see. It's not possible for them to see. So here, Venerable Sāriputta is highlighting the importance of, first, the nivarana, the obstacles, the hindrances, that whatever we're facing in our practice, that's the same ones that Venerable Sāriputta himself had to face, including the Buddha had to face. And every one of the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, upasikas, they all had to face that throughout centuries. Every Arahant, before they became Arahants, they had to struggle through them. They had to get a handle on these five hindrances. But you cannot just go hand-to-hand combat with these hindrances. You have to have a set of tools, powerful tools, which comes next, and Venerable Sāriputta calls that. It says, the Satta Bojjhangas, the seven factors of awakening, These are the powerful tools. Now remember, as to the image, the metaphor that Venerable Sāriputta used, the gate, the single gate, this is the gate being made reference to. This is it, the obstacle, the set of obstacles. The 7 factors of awakening, what are they? Sati, which is mindfulness. Dhamma vichaya, wise, discerning, looking at the various different mind objects that pop up all the time, appear, disappear, being able to see, because sometimes, if not all, most of the time, we take them to be real without questioning their authenticity, their true nature. Dhamma vichaya is the thing which allows us to carefully look and see and scrutinize and say, oh, no. This isn't what it's making out itself to be. Dhamma vichaya, which has a lot of panya, if you noticed, in it. Wisdom, discernment. Next you have virya, which is the effort, persevering, effort to never give up. Keep fueling yourself with energy to continue on maintaining sati, to maintain that discerning quality about you. These are the activating, energizing portions of the Satta Bojjhangas, the 7 factors of awakening. Next we get to piti, which is joy that arises in the heart as you're practicing. Because just for the simple fact that you're putting in effort and energy and you're maintaining course, suddenly something happens and there is tremendous joy that appears in the heart. It's like a waterfall that's upside down. It's, if you've ever gone to Yellowstone National Park in the US, there's a geyser that shoots up from the ground. It's called Old Faithful. Old Faithful because faithfully it keeps shooting up every hour or so. And it's been doing that for centuries as far as they know. So it's like that. It just juts out in the heart of the practitioner. It's called piti. But the moment it happens, this is not just regular kind of joy. This is spiritual joy, piti. Once it subsides, there's this tremendously beautiful, delicious quality of the mind that is tranquil. We call it passaddhi, tranquility of mind. And then, because of that, suddenly the heart really becomes locked in, settled in nicely, collected in what we call samadhi. And the 7th of the 7 factors of awakening is what ensues from that, and that is upekkha, equanimity, without which there cannot be any awakening taking place. These 7 are the antidotes to the 5 hindrances. I talk about this extensively in the book also. But this is the tool. This is the gate. So there was not extra outside different type of Dhamma that they had tapped into in order for them to gain release from suffering. He's saying, Venerable Sāriputta is saying, the same methods that you worked for the Arahants, Kassapa Buddha, eons ago, Sikhi Buddha, eons ago, they're the same ones that worked for our Tathagata, sitting there in front of me saying, my teacher, the Buddha. And by the same token, I can infer, based on this fact, because he has awakened. He himself is an Arahant. He's talking from experience. He hasn't read it in an article or something, in a scientific journal or somebody else's writing is coming from there. It's like, yeah, he's talking from living experience, by the way. That's where the confidence is coming from. He's not just moved by the beauty of the Dhamma inspired by the Buddha, this and that. Okay, those play a role, but they're nothing compared to his own personal experiencing of it. He knows what it tastes like. And based on that, he can infer as to the future ways that the Arahants will come about. The future Buddhas, this is how they will also attain Arahantship. That, he says, Bhante, is what I am relying on. Because it's the same pathway. It's the same gateway. When I was first translating the sutta, I was curious, how will Venerable Sāriputta really be able to answer such powerful questions? Because obviously he didn't have a time machine, I was thinking, to go back and we know from the suttas that he didn't have the psychic abilities as well as, let's say, Venerable Mamo Galana, to be able to tap into the past, to go into the past lives and to look carefully. He didn't have those. So I was very curious when I was first introduced to the sutta. I was like, okay, I'm reading the Pali. I was like, okay, Bhante, how will you answer this? It's tough questions, Bhante, Lord Buddha is asking. And wow, so succinct, so Venerable Sāriputta, so matter of fact, so simple, so direct, so kind, so gentle, so humble, so beautiful. No wonder he was also the embodiment of the Dhamma, in a sense. Similarly, Bhante, all the Arahants and all the fully awakened Buddhas that will appear in the future will have abandoned the 5 hindrances, the corruptions of the heart that weaken wisdom, while establishing their minds in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, while duly cultivating the 7 factors of awakening, and thus they will liberate themselves by waking up to the unsurpassed, supreme, and perfect enlightenment. So he's making a prediction as well, based on the inference. Inference, remember, if it is based on facts, evidence that are realizable, having been attained to by the individual, from that experience to come forward and say, this will happen if this path is taken, that's not insanity. That's not coming up with fantastical, assumptions. No, it's based on facts. Remember, facts don't necessarily have to be in zeros and numbers and things that are quantifiable on a piece of paper, that this and that over there can be read in something that others can point at. That's not necessarily the only categorization of what a fact is. The personal experiencing of it is. When you burn your hands touching fire, that is verifiable evidence as far as you're concerned. You know what fire tastes like. You don't have to go and read some article, some book, somebody else's statement about, who never touched fire, by the way, and then believe, oh yeah, fire, I guess fire does burn. No, it's all nonsense at that point, because you personally have known it. It's not an about affair. It's not an assumption on your part. It's a fact that you have lived. You know for sure. The Dhamma is no different in that regard. But the key factor that allows a Buddha to become a Buddha, the key factor that allows the Dhamma to be true, genuine Dhamma, it must have the 4 satipatthanas. It's impossible. And there's no other tradition that has that. Nowadays, you have other religions, other denominations using terminology. They've been using the Buddhist terminologies for decades. Merriam-Webster and all dictionaries now even include Buddhist terms which have been deprived on, neutered out of Buddhism. I remember in the 90s, you had Jewish rabbis, you had Catholic priests, you had Muslim sheikhs, Sufis going to and participating in Buddhist retreats to learn mindfulness, to learn sati. You had Catholic missionaries and Jesuit priests going to even University of Hawaii to study with one of my professors, David Kalupahana. He was a giant in Buddhist scholarship. To study with him in Hawaii to get their PhDs, Catholics. It's beautiful that they're, if the intentions were pure, of course, because they're exposed to the Dhamma that the Buddha taught. But so many people have been taking without applying properly, because it's trying to squeeze it into their system that cannot function. It's not designed. It's not taught by a Buddha. So, in a sense, what happens is it's borrowing some things that you think could fit into your own narrative, into your own storyline. That's not satipatthana. In order for the Dhamma to be, it has to have also the satipatthana. They're the legs of the experiencing of the Dhamma. And just to remind listeners as to, in case they've forgotten or don't know what they're being exposed to, the satipatthana for the first time, perhaps, we have the kaya, the body, kayanupassana, the observation of the body as it moves in time and space. How you carry. You can start with the breath. The Buddha says you can even start with just anapana, in and out breathing. Seeing the beginning, mid, end of the breath coming in. Similarly with the breath going out. But eventually, the person graduates into taking sati with him, with her, as they walk, go here, there, sit down, get up, and especially the transition points, the junction points between the sitting and having gotten up. What happens in between? That is the getting up, before, during, and after, where most of us are not there. As if we go on automatic pilot and we are completely oblivious of the importance of sati in those moments. Venerable Ānanda became an Arahant because he dropped into that junction point. Dropped as in he sustained his sati during the moment when he was sitting on his bed, and as he was about to drop his head, place it on the pillow right in that transition point. So he was not sitting per se, he wasn't lying down either. In between, and only Venerable Ānanda could give us a glimpse into that moment, that beautiful moment of Arahantship. Candid view of Arahantship. Courtesy of Venerable Ānanda himself. How beautiful. So, that's in a nutshell the Kayanupassana. Of course, that's not only it, because some years ago I covered here actually with our series the Mahasatipatthana Sutta from the Digha Nikaya. And there's two, right? There's the Mahasatipatthana from the Digha Nikaya, the long discourses, and then there's the Satipatthana Sutta, which is in the middle length discourses. I don't think I've done that with you yet. But essentially, it's coming from Mahasatipatthana, which is what I referred to here. And there's also the other meditations pertaining to the body contemplation, which also involves even the repulsive pertaining to the body, going to cremation grounds or observing the body in different states. So you're using the body as your anchor point of awareness, in a nutshell. Then you have the Vedananupassana, which are the feelings. You're using that as your basis of, or for mindfulness. It as in the feeling of pleasure, the feeling of that which is unpleasant or painful, and the one that is neither pleasant nor unpleasant, basically neutral. This basically is the spectrum of feeling as such. So you're observing from moment to moment. And remember, it's not just feeling. When we talk about feeling, it's not just physical, body-related feelings. The Buddha also talks about mental feelings. Mental, where the body is not necessarily feeling anything, but the mind is, such as ideas you could have, right? Or even in your dream, you're having feelings. You might be sitting there absent-mindedly, all of a sudden, papancha land, you're lost in it. You're making up stories, but that's not just being kept in a vacuum, because your mind is feeling pleasant or painful feelings. Fear, despite the fact that you might not physically be in terrifying situations, nevertheless, fear in the mind is a perfect example of a painful mental feeling. So don't just look at feeling or contemplation of feeling having just to do with the physical body. That would be incorrect. So this involves the whole spectrum of feeling, body, mind, etc. Next, you have the Chittanupassana. This is a higher level of contemplation, where you are observing the mind that is observing, that is noting what's happening. You're observing that. This is very confusing for many people. Shui Wumin Sayadaw was very skilled at explaining this in such simple forms, but we must practice enough of the body contemplation, and then become familiar with the feeling contemplation, just to look at the nature of the feeling as it fluctuates, to be able to see when they arise and when they vanish, to get us to a point where we can separate ourselves from the mind that is observing the object or the thing that's being taken note of, and to look at that whole process. We had a sample of this in the Majjhima Sutta, if you remember, on the middle. Powerful suttas. But when you look, Venerable Sāriputta is saying it's the same gateway as the Arahants of the past, the future, and what our teacher is teaching us. And his level, his depth, he has perfected these. And of course, the last of the Satipatthanas is basically the Dhammanupassana. These are the different states of mind that come in, including the five hindrances, including the Sattabodhangas, including the five factors of the aggregates, rather, that make us make us who we are as individuals, so-called, which are rupa, which is the form, vedana, feeling, perceptions, sanya, sankhara, the habitual drives or tendencies, and then vijnana, the consciousnesses, the six consciousnesses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. That pretty much makes a human being, according to Buddhism, according to the teachings of the Buddha. There is no single consciousness, as we see in other philosophical schools or in Western schools of psychology. We don't have that. Hence, we don't have a consciousness that keeps floating around from body to body, from life to life. This drives people crazy when they come approaching Buddhism and they can't pinpoint. It's like that donkey, when the kids play with the picture of a donkey and put the tail with a nail or pin, they blindfold the person, they spin them around, usually the birthday boy or girl, and they say, go ahead and stick the tail onto the donkey. And that's what human beings have been doing all throughout centuries, trying to stick the soul pin onto this thing called the body, onto this thing called me, myself, this I-ness. We want to stick it onto the donkey, but there isn't any. It's just series of conditions that are taking place, given other series of conditions that are taking place. So it's a jumble, it's a big blunder of change. Nothing is stable, nothing is permanent. So there's nothing for me to go ahead and grab, not even nibbana, right? As we saw in the Buddha's words a few weeks ago in the Mulapariyaya Sutta. These are just concepts. These are just grammatical tools that we use to make sense of the world that we're experiencing. Nothing to grab, nothing to carry with us. Remember, even the Dhamma, the Buddha says this, even the path, the Noble Eightfold Path, or the Dhamma itself, once the person has crossed over, they do not carry it over their head like a boat. He says this. The Buddha says this. He says, I have taught you this Dhamma to carry you across the flood, not to carry it over your head. The Dhamma. It's like that person who walks around being sick with a prescription that they magnified, laminated, and carrying it over their head and saying, I have the cure to my sickness. But they have not submitted that to the pharmacist, to the medicine man, to get the medicine so that they can heal. That's not the purpose of the Dhamma. Venerable Sāriputta is giving the purpose, explaining it to us, the structure, reminding us of it. And similarly, Bhante, at present, all the Arahants, starting with the Blessed One himself, all have already abandoned the 5 hindrances, the corruptions of the heart that weaken wisdom. You cannot coexist with the hindrances. This is important. Sometimes we think that, oh, I can have a little bit of doubt, or I can have some drowsiness, I can have agitation. It's just part of my personality. It doesn't work. It weakens wisdom. Anything that has the potential of turning into wisdom is going to be undermined and gone. The progress will no longer be progress. Then we will regress, in fact. They, having well established their minds in the 4 foundations of mindfulness and duly cultivated 7 factors of awakening, and thus they have liberated themselves by waking up to the unsurpassed, supreme, and perfect enlightenment. So this is basically the Venerable Sāriputta's response, and here is Lord Buddha, responding to that. Sadhu, sadhu indeed, Sāriputta, exclaimed the Blessed One, while confirming the heartfelt declaration uttered by Sāriputta, the chief disciple. Then the teacher continued instructing. In this manner, Sāriputta, you must therefore continue to teach and share the beautiful Dhamma, as you instruct and encourage your fellow bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, as well as the upasikas and upasikas, the male and female lay disciples. For in doing so, those listening to your words, who might be of a lesser capacity of understanding or faith, still lacking that strong trust and confidence in their heart towards the Tathagata, but on being exposed to your explanation and sharing of this beautiful Dhamma, they too will indeed come out of their delusion, abandoning at last and leaving behind their perplexities and doubts, along with whatever wrong views that once plagued them. Sad, sad, sad. Yet another intimate moment between teacher and student, as you can see here. We're working against series of tendencies that we're so familiar with. Unfortunately, that familiarity has made us believe that that is natural. For the simple fact that these things, these tendencies are familiar to us because we have done them so often, somewhere in the mind, somewhere in our habitual pattern of thinking and processing, we have stopped or refused to question their validity, especially in terms of giving us or providing us safety and happiness. Meanwhile, at the end of the day, that's what we are all craving. We want peace, we want comfort, we want freedom from suffering. But the methods at which we apply to gain freedom from suffering do the opposite. That's why it's insanity. That's why Lord Buddha calls human beings, he says, majority of the planet is occupied by idiots. People are crazy, he says. He says so. But why? Not because somebody gave us a crazy or some type of a concoction to make us crazy. Not necessarily. We dedicate ourselves diligently to apply ourselves every day to remain stupid, basically, because we repeat same old patterns that do not provide us tranquility, collectedness of mind, and above all, wisdom. So it's a dilemma for any teacher to see how the teacher could help the student come out of that trap. And when you read the Therigata or Theragata, the awakened Arahant Bhikkhunis and Bhikkhus, in their statements, in their verses, they're so matter of fact. When they say to you, when they're describing how at one point they were worshiping the body, let's say, sensuality, that was life for them. And then they saw, they had to see through, they had to stop camouflaging things. They had to stop lying to themselves about things. They had to walk away from papanchas. Papanchas are the mental proliferations, the tiny little mini stories that end up being motion pictures playing constantly in our minds. Our stories, to which we serve as the main actors, the directors, the producers, the story artists, storyboard artists, screenwriters, everything. And that's why we are the authors of our own suffering, ultimately. That's why the Buddha says again and again, your only inheritance is your kamma, your intentional actions. No one else is. Don't blame anyone. Sāriputta, he could have stayed as a nobleman, as a Brahmin, wealthy, prince-like, if not even higher in status. Very, very rich, ridiculously rich part of Indian society. Same thing with Venerable Mahamoggallana. As Upatissa and Kolita, they could have stayed like that. They could have if they wanted to, but that's the thing. They did not, because they were seeing too much. In order for us to stay, as I was mentioning, how we struggle, we strive every day to keep ourselves stupid, in a sense. We have to lie to ourselves. They could not lie to themselves anymore. In fact, the switch that happened in their mind, in their hearts, was that week. At the end of, there were series of celebrations going on at a hilltop. And dancers, this and that, drinks, all kinds of entertainment, carnival type of a thing, in those days. And the two friends who were friends from many lifetimes, in fact, and in that lifetime, the last lifetime, Upatissa and Kolita, Venerable Sāriputta and Mahamoggallana, future, they had attended all of the days repeatedly, one after the other. In fact, at one point, one of them turned around to the other and he said, "You look like you're not enjoying any of this." And the other one says, "That's funny, because that's exactly how I think, how I see you also. But I'm putting up with it, you're putting up with it, so we're both putting up with this." And they said, "Why don't we stop putting up with all this nonsense and this craziness? What is this? Dancing, this, that, entertainment, people are jumping around like." So that takes courage now, for each person to reach that point and say, "I'm not going to buy into this nonsense." That is the first step that a person is taking away from being a putujjana, a common, ordinary person, unlearned person, a person who's in the dark. So we have been introduced with this sutta by Venerable Sāriputta to help us understand, to break through, and to see how we can make the Dhamma come alive in our lives, so that we also can attain a level of confidence that is unprecedented in our lives. There is no competition with anyone outside of us. Remember that. You're not competing with Venerable Sāriputta's level of confidence. That's not what he is asking from us. But make each day an unprecedented day that you have lived, unprecedented by your own standards. Make each day unprecedented in the level of work you can put, dedication you can apply, trust you can apply, gratitude you can live towards, first, having a body that works, having a brain that works, of course, they come hand in hand, but especially to have the potential, the possibility to be applying those resources towards understanding with the means of the Dhamma that is still available in the world today. And each day, if we can just add that by a slight gradient, by a slight push on the scale, but you have to also be able to see evidence of that pure, genuine effort that you're applying in the form of added calmness, added level of clarity, added joy, added level of understanding, and especially less burdensome. Life becoming less burdensome for you, where you do not put up with nonsense as you did yesterday. So you're calling things out the way they are. Now, sometimes that also means you need to walk away from certain surroundings, certain people, certain situations. Certain habits have to be relinquished for some of us. But at least for all of us, it has to be done internally. Otherwise, the Dhamma and ignorance cannot coexist. Darkness and light cannot coexist. So that's why the Putujjana and the Arya Savaka, the noble disciple, and the Putujjana cannot coexist in you. One has salvation in it. One has freedom from suffering, and not in a future date, remember. So you have to see the evidence of your practice on a daily basis, for which you are being very grateful at the end of the day and the following morning as well when you wake up. This is when the Dhamma becomes something alive for you. It's not a matter of rites and rituals. It's not a belief in anyone's word. It's not maintaining some tradition. It is real, and that's what it was for Venerable Sāriputta. One day, some Brahmins came by to listen to the Buddha. And I don't know, I don't remember if it was badly intentioned or basically one of the chief Brahmins, visiting Brahmins, in referring to the role of belief, because he himself was a teacher and his students were with him. So the students believed their teacher, this Brahmin who was about to speak, blindly believing in that teacher. Why? Because he's the teacher. End of story. So this Brahmin turns to the Buddha and says, for example, the chief disciple of your sasana, Venerable Sāriputta here, who is respected throughout the land, if he doesn't have belief in you, he cannot maintain that position. He cannot be so dedicated to the path, etc., etc. I'm paraphrasing here, of course. The Buddha does not miss a beat, as they say, skip a beat. And he turns to Sāriputta and asks immediately, point blank. He says, Sāriputta, is it true? Do you believe in me? Years ago, when I read that, I was like, of course he believes you, Bhante, of course he believes you. I was a kid. I was an idiot. I was, reading that for the first time, and I was like, and Sāriputta said the unthinkable. He said, no, Bhante, I don't believe in you. You can almost like hear that gasp, the jaws dropped of those Brahmins sitting there. I don't believe you, Bhante. I have tasted the Dhamma, he says. I have tasted the truth in what you have taught me, Bhante. I don't believe any of it. Wow. That was spoken by a human being over 2,600 years ago. Talk about courage. That taught those Brahmins a major lesson. As well as the bhikkhus who were sitting there who had not yet attained, mind you. And that's what the Dhamma does. The role that it can play for us as well, because you don't have the Buddha with you. Even if you did, what would it mean? Why? Why would it mean anything? You already have the Dhamma. That's enough. More than enough. But you have to bring it to life. The Buddha you will never be able to bring to life. The Dhamma you can. And that's why the Buddha said, he who sees the Dhamma sees me. Now that is the gateway that Venerable Sāriputta is also talking about. So I will stop here and see if there are any comments, questions. I hope you like the sutta. There are so many treasures like that. It's strewn all over the Nikayas. We just have to go looking for them. Any questions, comments before we? Okay. Oh, is there one? No. Okay, so let us transfer some merits. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu lokasasana. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu desana. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May the Dhamma receive our appreciation every day, every hour, which we show through our practice, our ardor, our vigilance, our heedfulness, appamad, the effort. Just like a person who's terribly hungry or terribly thirsty after having walked through the scorching heat in the desert for 17 days straight, and somehow, some way they made it out, and they see fresh spring water, or somebody offers them a meal. They don't sit there and look at it. That's ardency. That's vigilance. That's heedfulness in our practice. So may it grow every day. May you taste the Dhamma's fruits every day. May it become 100%, 100% accurate in your hearts. That level of confidence, whereby Venerable Sāriputta, if he were alive, he would look at you and smile and nod in appreciation that his words have touched the nerve, have reached you across the centuries. May you be happy. May you and your loved ones be healthy and happy, prosperous, protected, and may the Dhamma grow in your life, in your heart, in your household. Sukyoto.